You know that feeling? You're in the middle of a conversation, maybe with your partner over dinner or a colleague on Slack, and suddenly it feels like you're talking to a wall. It starts simple enough, a comment about the dishes, a note about a deadline, but then, spiraling out of nowhere, you're in a fight. You're defensive, they're shut down, and you're left wondering, how did we get here? Why does it feel like nobody actually listens? Why do our best intentions, our desire to be helpful or honest, so often lead to hurt feelings and bad arguments? The pain of that disconnection is real, whether it's the silence between parents and children or the cold shoulder from a spouse. It's exhausting. But here is the thing. The problem usually isn't what you are trying to say. It's how you've been conditioned to think and speak. From the time we are children, especially here in the US, think about it. Our culture is obsessed with the courtroom drama, the debate stage. We are trained to analyze, to classify, and to label. If you aren't right, you must be wrong. If you aren't good, you must be bad. We speak a language that is designed for judgment, for figuring out who is at fault, creating what some experts call life-alienating communication. We aren't really hearing the other person. We're just waiting for our turn to prosecute. So if we want to stop arguing and start connecting, we have to unlearn the rules of that game.
And unlearning those rules is exactly where we start today. Welcome back to The Last Read, books for your ears, wisdom for your life. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because you really don't want to miss the kind of insights that can turn your daily life around. The book we are diving into today holds what is essentially a secret code to dissolving conflict. Not just managing it, but actually dissolving it.
This isn't just some pop psychology fluff. This is a method that has been used by diplomats negotiating peace treaties in war zones, by mediators in some of the most violent conflicts on the planet. And now, it's available for you to use in your living room or your office. And if you want to go straight to the source, we have the link to the book waiting for you, right there in the description.
At the core of this book is a 4-step process, just 4 steps, that completely rewires how we listen and how we speak. It sounds deceptively simple on the surface, but these 4 steps have the power to break through decades of silence and resentment in a matter of minutes. But before we get into the mechanics of those steps, we need to meet the man who figured them out.
Marshall B. Rosenberg didn't start out as a guru on a mountaintop. He started out as a kid trying to survive the mean streets of Detroit in the 1940s. And when I say mean streets, I don't just mean a rough neighborhood. In 1943, when Marshall was just 9 years old, a massive race riot broke out in his city. For 3 days, violence tore through the community. 34 people were killed, and Marshall witnessed this brutality right on his doorstep. It was a traumatic introduction to the world, and it planted a seed in his mind that would eventually grow into this entire methodology. He couldn't understand why people who could be so kind in one moment could turn so violent in the next, and why others, even in the midst of that chaos, managed to stay compassionate. So, he did what many of us do when we want answers about human behavior. He went to school. He earned his PhD in clinical psychology, becoming a fully credentialed doctor of the mind. But here is where the story takes a turn.
Marshall quickly realized that the tools he was given, the traditional tools of psychology, were actually part of the problem. He found that the entire field was obsessed with diagnosis and pathology, essentially figuring out what was wrong with a person so you could slap a label on them. He felt that classifying people as neurotic or psychopathic didn't actually help heal the violence. It just created more distance, more judgment. It was a system of thinking that viewed human beings as broken objects to be fixed, rather than living souls to be understood. So, he walked away from the traditional path. He abandoned the safety of the clinic to chase 2 fundamental questions that had haunted him since those riots in Detroit. First, what happens to disconnect us from our compassionate nature, leading us to behave violently or exploitatively? And second, what allows some people to stay connected to their compassionate nature, even under the most trying circumstances? This wasn't just academic theory for him. Rosenberg took these questions into the real world, and I mean the real world.
He worked with civil rights activists in the 1960s. He mediated between rioting students and college administrators, and he eventually traveled to war zones in the Middle East, Africa, and Eastern Europe to facilitate peace talks between groups that had been killing each other for generations. He wasn't just teaching people how to be nice, he was teaching them how to survive together. And through all that fire, through all those high-stakes conflicts, he distilled everything he learned into a simple framework. He realized that if we want to stay connected to that compassionate nature, the giraffe nature, as he sometimes called it, because giraffes have the largest hearts of any land mammal, we need to completely change the way we process information. He found that there are 4 specific components that, if used correctly, can bridge almost any divide. These 4 components are the ingredients of the secret code I mentioned earlier, and just like baking a cake or building a house, if you leave one out, the whole thing collapses.
So, following that recipe, here are the 4 ingredients that Marshall Rosenberg laid out. They sound deceptively simple, almost too simple to be a secret code for world peace, but stick with me. The 4 components are observations, feelings, needs, and requests. That's it, just those 4. But the magic is in how they fit together, and more importantly, how we usually get them completely wrong. Let's break them down. First, you have observations. This is simply stating what happened, the raw data, without any spin or judgment attached to it. It's the difference between saying, "You're messy," which is a judgment, and saying, "I see 3 pairs of socks on the living room floor," which is an observation.
Second, feelings. This is identifying the emotion that rises up in us when we observe that thing. It's about being able to say, "I feel frustrated," or "I feel lonely," rather than disguising thoughts as feelings, like saying, "I feel like you don't care about me." Third, and this is the core of the entire framework, needs. This is the root cause, the deep, universal human value that is creating that feeling. Maybe you need order, maybe you need connection, maybe you need reassurance. Rosenberg believed that every negative feeling is just a flashing light on the dashboard telling us that a need isn't being met. And finally, the 4th ingredient, requests. This is where you ask for a specific, concrete action that would meet that need. Not a vague hope, not a demand, but a clear, positive request for something doable. Now, if you look at that list, it seems straightforward enough. We observe something, we feel something about it, we identify what we need, and we ask for it. Simple, right?
But in practice, most of us mix these ingredients up constantly, and that is where the cake collapses. We think we're making an observation, but we're actually making a judgment. We think we're expressing a feeling, but we're really just blaming the other person. And we think we're making a request, but because we haven't done the work on the first 3 steps, it comes out as a demand. We try to build the roof of the house, the request, without laying the foundation of the observation or the framing of the needs, and we wonder why the whole thing falls down on our heads. So, to really understand how to use this tool, we have to slow down and look at each component individually, starting with the one that trips people up the most. It starts with learning how to see the world like a camera and not like a critic.
The first ingredient is observation, and honestly, this is the one we mess up the most often. We think we're good at seeing reality, but what we're usually doing is interpreting it through a lens of judgment. Marshall Rosenberg calls this life-alienating communication. It's a bit of a heavy term, but the concept is simple. It's language that cuts us off from compassion, language that categorizes people as right or wrong, good or bad, normal or abnormal. When we speak this way, we aren't actually talking about what is happening in the world. We are talking about our opinion of what is happening. There is a quote in the book attributed to the Indian philosopher J. Krishnamurti, and it really captures why this is so hard. He said that observing without evaluating is the highest form of human intelligence. The highest form. That feels like a high bar, doesn't it? But let's look at why it's true with a common scenario, the classic argument about household chores.
Imagine a couple. Let's call them Alex and Sam. Alex walks into the kitchen, sees a pile of dishes, and says, "Sam, you are so lazy." Now,
pause the tape there. You are so lazy. Is that an observation? No, it's a verdict. It's a diagnosis. Lazy isn't a physical object you can see. It's an evaluation of Sam's character based on Alex's internal standards. And what happens immediately? Sam's walls go up. Sam isn't thinking about the dishes anymore. Sam is thinking, I'm not lazy. I worked 10 hours today. You're the one who's unreasonable. The connection is broken before the conversation even begins. Now, rewind the tape. Let's try it with pure observation. Alex walks in and says, Sam, I see that the dishes from last night are still on the counter. Do you feel the difference? The dishes are on the counter is a fact. You can take a picture of it. A video camera would record the same thing. There is no moral judgment attached to it. It's just data.
When you lead with an observation like that, Sam might still be annoyed about the dishes, but Sam doesn't feel attacked as a person. There is no label to defend against. The door remains open for actual communication, rather than a courtroom trial where one person is the prosecutor and the other is the defendant. This is the discipline of the first step. You have to strip away the adjectives, strip away the history, and strip away the blame, until you are left with just the raw footage of reality. But once you've managed to capture that footage, once you can look at the sink and just see dishes, not disrespect, you're faced with the next challenge. Because usually when we see those dishes, we don't just see them. We have a physical reaction to them. We feel something. And just like we confuse observations with judgments, we have a bad habit of confusing our actual emotions with our thoughts.
Which leads us directly into the second component of nonviolent communication, feelings. Now, this might sound like the easy part. You might be thinking, I know how I feel. I feel annoyed. I feel hungry. I feel tired. But Marshall Rosenberg discovered something fascinating and slightly troublesome about how we use the word feel in English. We have a bad habit of using the word feel to disguise thoughts as emotions. We do it all the time. How many times have you heard someone say, or maybe said it yourself, I feel like you aren't listening to me, or I feel like this is a waste of time? Here is the rule of thumb Rosenberg teaches. If you use the words I feel followed by the word like or that, you are not expressing a feeling. You are expressing a thought. You are expressing an opinion. I feel like you don't care is not a feeling. It is a diagnosis of the other person's psychology. It's a judgment. A genuine feeling is an internal emotional state. It's sad, happy, frustrated, joyful, scared, anxious. It describes what is happening inside your skin, not what you think is happening in someone else's head.
And this distinction is critical because thoughts provoke debate, whereas feelings invite connection. Let's look at that workplace scenario we mentioned. Imagine you are in a team meeting, you pitch an idea, and nobody responds. They just move on to the next agenda item. Later, you go up to your manager and say, I feel ignored. Now, in NVC terms, ignored is not a feeling. Ignored is an interpretation of their behavior. It implies that they did something to you. It implies there is a perpetrator. To say, I feel ignored, is effectively saying, I think you are ignoring me. And what happens when you tell someone they are ignoring you? They defend themselves. They say, I wasn't ignoring you. I was just busy checking the agenda. The conversation becomes an argument about their actions. But if you strip away the interpretation, what is the actual emotion underneath ignored? Maybe you feel embarrassment. Maybe you feel lonely. Maybe you feel discouraged. If you say to your manager, when nobody responded to my idea, I felt really embarrassed, that is a completely different conversation.
You aren't accusing them of anything. You are revealing your own vulnerability. It's much harder to argue with, I feel embarrassed, than you ignored me. Rosenberg often pointed out that words like ignored, betrayed, abandoned, or manipulated, these are not emotions. These are what some NVC practitioners call victim verbs. They tell a story about what someone else did to us, rather than how we feel inside. Learning to identify the raw emotion, the sadness, the fear, the confusion, is a skill. It requires us to slow down and check our internal weather report, rather than just looking out the window and blaming the rain on the neighbors. But why do we feel these things? Why does a sink full of dishes make one person feel furious and another person feel indifferent?
Why does silence in a meeting make you feel embarrassed? It's not the dishes, and it's not the silence. Rosenberg suggests that our feelings are actually just indicators, like warning lights on the dashboard, alerting us to something deeper. They are the smoke, but we need to find the fire. And that fire, the root cause of every single emotion you have ever felt, is the third component, the universal language that we all speak, but rarely articulate.
Needs. It is the third component, and frankly, it is the engine under the hood of everything we have talked about so far. Now, in our culture, especially here in the US, the word needy has a bit of a stigma, doesn't it? We value independence. We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. To have needs feels weak. It feels dependent. But Rosenberg flips this script entirely. He defines needs as life energy seeking fulfillment. They aren't weaknesses. They are the fundamental resources required to sustain life. And I don't just mean food, water, and shelter. I mean the psychological roots of our well-being: autonomy, connection, safety, play, integrity, meaning. Here is the mental model you need to adopt, and it is a hard one to swallow at first. Every negative emotion you feel is the result of an unmet need. Let that sink in. We are conditioned to believe that our feelings are caused by other people. We say things like, "You make me so angry," or "You hurt my feelings." In NVC, this is factually incorrect. Rosenberg teaches that what others do is the stimulus for our feelings, but it is never the cause. The cause is how we receive that stimulus, based on our needs at that moment.
Marshall Rosenberg has this famous quote that really sums it up. Every criticism, judgment, diagnosis, and expression of anger is the tragic expression of an unmet need. He calls it tragic because when we express our pain as judgment, when we scream, "You're lazy," instead of "I need help," we actually decrease the likelihood of getting that need met. We guarantee defensiveness rather than cooperation. Let's look at that example of the parent yelling at a child. Picture a Tuesday evening. The parent comes home exhausted. They walk into the living room and it looks like a tornado hit the toy chest. Legos everywhere. The parent snaps. They yell, "You are so messy. You are being disrespectful." Now, is the parent angry because the child is messy? No. If that same parent had come home on a Friday after a great promotion and a glass of wine, they might see those same toys and think, "Oh, look how much fun they had today." The stimulus, the toys on the floor, is the same, but the need is different. On Tuesday, the parent had a depleted need for order and rest. The anger wasn't caused by the child. It was a signal flashing on the dashboard saying, need for order is critical, need for rest is critical.
When we shift from blaming the other person, "You are bad," to owning the need, "I feel overwhelmed because I need order," the game changes. You stop being a victim of your circumstances. You become the owner of your experience. And the beautiful thing is, needs are universal. If you tell someone, "I need you to stop being a jerk," they will argue with you. That is a judgment. But if you say, "I feel hurt because I have a need for respect and safety," no one can argue with that. We all know what a need for respect feels like. We all know the need for safety. It connects us. But here is the catch. Identifying the need is only half the battle. You can sit there all day realizing, "I have a strong need for connection," or "I have a need for autonomy." That is great for self-awareness, but it doesn't actually change the situation. It doesn't get the Legos off the floor. To bridge the gap between our internal needs and the external world, we have to do the one thing most of us are terrible at. We have to ask. But how do you ask without it sounding like a demand? How do you ask in a way that actually invites the other person to help you, rather than forcing them? That brings us to the final component. Requests. Now, this sounds simple, right? You just ask for what you want. But in Marshall Rosenberg's framework, a request is a very specific thing, and it is definitely not a demand. Most of us think we're making requests, but we're actually making demands. And the difference isn't in the words we use, it's in what happens next. Here is the litmus test. What happens if they say no? If you ask your partner to do the dishes and they say, "I'm actually really tired, I can't right now," and you immediately get angry,
give them the cold shoulder, or start a lecture about how lazy they are, then you didn't make a request, you made a demand. See, a demand implies that there is only one acceptable answer, yes. If no is met with punishment, whether that's yelling or just withdrawal of affection, the other person never really had a choice. And when people feel they don't have a choice, they shift into submission or rebellion. That is power over dynamics.
Rosenberg argues that we want to shift to power with. We want them to do it not because they're afraid of us, but because they genuinely want to contribute to our well-being. So how do we frame a true request? We use what Rosenberg calls positive action language. This is harder than it sounds. We are often much better at saying what we don't want than what we do want. We say, "Stop ignoring me," or "I don't want you to work so much." There is a famous story from the book about a woman who told her husband, "I don't want you spending so much time at work." She thought she was clear, but she stated it in the negative. So the husband responded to her request by signing up for a golf tournament. He wasn't at work anymore. Technically, he did what she asked. Negative requests are confusing. They leave a void. Don't do X doesn't tell someone to do Y. So instead of saying, "Stop ignoring me," which is vague and attacks them, you make it concrete and positive. You say, "Would you be willing to spend 5 minutes sitting with me right now to talk about our day?" Notice the difference? It's specific. It's doable. It's an action they can take right now. And most importantly, it's an invitation, not an order. When you speak this way, expressing clear observations, owning your feelings, stating your needs, and making a doable request, you have done your part. You have expressed yourself with total honesty and vulnerability. But communication is a two-way street. You can do everything right, and the other person might still be screaming at you. They might be judging you, or they might just be in a lot of pain themselves. So, once we've had our say, we have to switch gears. We have to stop talking and start receiving. And that requires a radical shift in how we pay attention, leading us to perhaps the most profound part of this entire book.
So once we stop talking and start listening, we enter the realm of empathy. Now, I want to be very precise here, because in our culture, we tend to use the word empathy pretty loosely. We often confuse it with sympathy or pity, or even just being nice. But Marshall Rosenberg defines it very differently. He calls empathy a respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. And the key word there is respectful. It means we empty our minds. We listen with our whole being. It is a state of pure presence. Rosenberg actually used a phrase that flips our usual instincts upside down. He said, "Don't just do something, stand there." Think about that for a second. Don't just do something, stand there. Because our instinct, especially when we see someone in pain, is to do something. We are trained to be fixers. If you tell me you have a problem, my brain immediately starts searching for a solution. I want to make the pain go away. But in NVC, that urge to fix is actually an obstacle. It blocks connection. Rosenberg actually identified a whole list of things we do instead of empathy. We think we're helping, but we're actually disconnecting.
There's advising. I think you should just... There's educating. Well, this is actually a learning opportunity for you. There's consoling. It wasn't your fault. You did the best you could. And there's one-upping. Oh, that's nothing. Wait until you hear what happened to me. Notice what all of these have in common? They are all about us. They are about our thoughts, our advice, our stories. They shift the focus away from the other person's pain and onto our intellect. True empathy requires dropping your agenda entirely. It's a physical sensation, almost a relief, of letting go of the burden to fix anything. You are just there. You are witnessing. Let's look at a concrete scenario to see how this plays out. Imagine a friend comes to you absolutely fuming. They say, "I can't believe my boss. He's micromanaging everything I do. It's impossible to get any work done." Now, the jackal in us, the fixer, might say, "You should just quit," or maybe you should talk to HR. Or maybe we console them. "Oh, you poor thing. Don't worry, he's probably just stressed. But the giraffe, the empathetic listener, does something else. They don't offer a solution. They don't judge the boss. They just shine a light on what the friend is experiencing right now.
You might say, it sounds like you're feeling really frustrated because you have a need for trust and autonomy in your work. Notice the difference? You aren't fixing the boss. You aren't fixing the job. You are just hearing the human across from you. And here is the magic of it. When people hear that, when they feel truly understood without judgment, often they stop screaming. The tension drops because they don't want a solution. They want to be known. Rosenberg often said that when we give this kind of empathy, it's like we aren't even there. We become a conduit for the energy of the other person. We don't direct the flow, we follow it. And when you do this, when you stop trying to be the hero who saves the day, and instead become the companion who sits in the dark with them, the dynamic shifts, the wall comes down. But this is hard. It is incredibly hard to rewire our brains from judging and fixing to observing and connecting. It requires a fundamental change in how we view the world, a shift from the language of the head to the language of the heart. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the transformation that happens when you put all of this together.
And that final piece is the choice you make every single time you open your mouth. It's the choice between the jackal and the giraffe. Throughout this book, Rosenberg uses these two animals as symbols for the two ways we can exist in the world. And honestly, once you see them, you can't unsee them. First, you have the jackal. This is the language most of us were raised on. It's a language of labeling, classifying, and diagnosing. The jackal stays close to the ground. Its vision is limited. It's focused on who is right, who is wrong, who is good, and who is bad. When we speak jackal, we are essentially playing judge, jury, and executioner with our words. We say things like, "You're lazy," or "That was disrespectful." We use guilt and shame as tools to get what we want. It's efficient, but it disconnects us. And then you have the giraffe. Now, Rosenberg chose the giraffe for a very specific reason. Biologically, the giraffe has the largest heart of any land animal, 40 pounds of heart, pumping life through that massive system. And because of that long neck, the giraffe has a long-range view. It can see the whole landscape. It doesn't get bogged down in the immediate reaction of the moment. It sees the wider context. When we speak giraffe, we are speaking the language of the heart. We aren't interested in classifying behavior. We're interested in connecting with the human behind the behavior. We stop asking, "What is wrong with you?" and start asking, "What do you need?" The transformation Rosenberg is asking us to make, moving from jackal to giraffe, is not about being nice. It's not about being soft. It's about being conscious. It's about having the courage to drop the defense mechanisms that keep us safe but lonely, and instead choosing the vulnerability that makes us real. But let's be real for a second. This is a practice. You don't just read the book and suddenly sprout a 40-pound heart. You're going to mess up. You're going to snap at your partner, or judge a coworker, or blame the traffic for your bad mood. You're going to have plenty of jackal moments. And that is okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. So here is my invitation to you. Just for today, try to make one single observation without an evaluation. Just one.
When you walk into the kitchen and see the dishes in the sink, catch yourself before you say, "My roommate is a slob." That's the jackal. Instead, try to just see the reality. There are 3 plates and 2 cups in the sink. That's the camera check. If a camera took a picture, what would it see? It wouldn't see a slob. It would just see dishes. Start there. It sounds small, but it is the seed of everything else. If you can clear your vision enough to see the world as it is, rather than how you judge it to be, you are halfway to the giraffe. If you really want to rewire your brain, you have to do the work. This book, Nonviolent Communication, is not a light read. It's a manual for living. I cannot recommend enough that you pick up a copy and really sit with the exercises. It's one of those rare books that actually delivers on the promise of changing your life. That is it for our deep dive into the language of life. I hope you found something here that helps you connect a little better, listen a little deeper,
And maybe, just maybe, keep that jackal in check. This has been The Last Read. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive. And as always, you can find a link to the book right there in the description. Thanks for listening.